Hoot Productions presents the Sports Deli podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, where we discuss the intersection between race and sports, mental health, leadership, and equality. To find out more about the Sports Deli podcast, check us out online at thesportsdelipodcast.com. We are starting to have free giveaways. If you hear giveaway anywhere in the podcast, send us an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com with giveaway in the subject heading, and in the body of the email, give us the answer to that podcast's specific question.
Yeah. Stephen A. Smith is my alter ego. Go somewhere else with that shit.
John, she's roasting your ass right from the jump. We ain't done the intro yet. What the fuck?
To me, Colin Kaepernick is a hero.
And Colin Kaepernick is going to go down as a legend. And when George Floyd called out to his mother, he called out to all mothers. And I heard his call.
So do you have white privilege?
Absolutely.
I think there's a balance between the idea of universal white privilege, and it doesn't exist.
That now we have to be a voice as white people.
About it, African American women last year changed the course of this nation. Women are the backbone, and now we need to support the souls that they stand on.
And now, whether you're folding laundry, driving, exercising, or cooking, grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. Auntie, take us away. We're so excited to be joined during National Suicide Prevention Month by Omaha, Nebraska native Rex Walters. He played his high school ball in San Jose, California at Piedmont High School, and then went on to play his college ball first at Northwestern in the Big Ten, and then later at Kansas for Hall of Fame coach Roy Williams, where he was a two-time All-Big 8 selection. He was born the same year as George Lynch, former Tar Heel, who was also on our show during season 2. He was in the movie Blue Chips. He shares a birthday with Darryl Strawberry, Rod Smith, and Mitt Romney. He was drafted number 16 overall in the 93 NBA draft by the New Jersey Nets, and he played until 2003. Then began his coaching career, and he has coached for more than 20 years at the collegiate and NBA levels. He played with Kenny Anderson, who was also on our show, Kenny's great friend, Detroit native Derek Coleman, Bad Boy Rick Mahorn, and many other incredible collegiate and NBA players. The late Hall of Fame coach Chuck Daly was one of his coaches in the NBA. Most recently, he coached with the New Orleans Pelicans. His daughter works for the Minnesota Timberwolves as a video associate. Don't underestimate the importance of this job, as this is where Eric Spoelstra got his start as a video coordinator for the Miami Heat. You can find him on IG and on Instagram at Coach Rex 23 and on Twitter at Coach Rex Walters. And we've had probably close to 25, maybe almost 30 at this point, NBA and WNBA players, Rex. So truly honored that you're joining us, sharing safe space with us here on the Sports Deli podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. So welcome, bro.
Well, thank you for having me. That was quite an introduction. Gee, you've done your homework.
Well, we always talk, like a couple of my other co-hosts. One of them worked for Orlando when Musselman was there and Deli was there, and he's busy right now. And the other one, he's a sports fanatic. We always ask ourselves, should we do it in post-production? But the reactions every time is just worth the price of admission. So we just continue to do it. The first question I have is, well, first of all, people that come into the Sports Deli have great karma. So Nikki Collin was in the Sports Deli, and then she got the job at Baylor. And Lindsey Gottlieb, she came on, then she got the job at USC. So we're trying to throw out some good karma there for you, because, we know that, like, we'll talk about this later, but you, Matt, Lav, you still, I think, have that itch and still maybe want to get back somewhere. And so we got good karma here, man. So we're excited to have you, and hopefully it'll help.
I appreciate that. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Yeah. But I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I first started, we were just talking sports, talking shit, and it's evolved since the death of George Floyd. And I wouldn't call myself an influencer, but I've become somewhat of a connector. I'm on a think tank now with former NFL head coach Hugh Jackson, and I've put people in touch with others. Mike Sweetney came on, talked about his story and how he had overcome depression and suicide, and Shea Hillenbrand, Major League Baseball player, same thing. And so it's just interesting to hear people's stories, because I think that people can learn a lot, from everyone's chase of their respective dreams, and everyone's method of getting there was different. Like Jay Billis came on and he talked about how his high school experience was horrible. And maybe you've heard him talk about this. And and he was scarred. He said it was a horrible experience, and his wife had to call him on it when they went back for a reunion. And so I think you might have had a little bit better experience. And your dad was very influential. He was the only voice that you listened to back then. So first, talk a little bit about, and I know you've talked about this probably a million times, but I love hearing about it, because my dad committed suicide when I was 9. And so my coaches were my lifeline. They were the reason that I stayed out of trouble. They saved me. Sports saved me. My youth coaches saved me. A lot of those types of strong male figures saved me. And so talk about not only the impact of sports, obviously, that it had on your life, but the impact of strong people that empowered you and supported you when, you were just like anyone else as a kid trying to figure things out, and what your passions were.
I've had some great coaches in my life, and I'm not talking about the Hall of Famers like Chuck Daly and Pat Riley and Larry Brown, Roy Williams. Obviously, they had a tremendous impact on me. No, Roy Williams probably more so, because I was still in a formative years. When you're in college, you're still trying to find out who you are. But my first coach is my father. In 4th grade, my dad coaches me, and you learn a lot of lessons at a very young age. You just about competing, playing by the rules, how hard you have to play. How a great lesson. We were undefeated. We lose the championship game because the team figured out there was no 10-second rule and you couldn't press. So they decided to not cross half court after they got a lead in the second half. And my father was a great example. He wasn't happy about it, but we took it, and that's the way they're going to play. That's the way they're going to play. It's a lot like life. Life isn't always fair. And sometimes the better team doesn't win, but it's how you react to that situation and that result. So my father had and he's coached me all his life, all my life, I should say.
Was he a player?
He played. He played. Yeah. He was more in track, but he comes from Quincy, Illinois, where basketball is very, very important to that city. So
we really don't want to talk about Illinois right now. I don't think, between that last football game on opening weekend. That was that a tough one for you, that Cornhusker loss?
Oh, you know what? I've been dealing with so much. We were in New Orleans, and so we Saturday morning found out there's a hurricane coming in. It's going from tropical storm to a hurricane category, possibly 4, maybe 5. We packed up all of Friday, and we drove a truck and 3 cars with 5 kids, 4 kids, 3 dogs.
Wow.
And a husband and wife. We drove up to Michigan. So that's why I'm in this Airbnb right now.
Wow.
But getting back to and then, Terry Moriyama, I'm half Japanese. I don't look it, but Terry Moriyama is one that really helped me believe in myself. And it wasn't anything he ever said. It wasn't anything more than I just felt like he believed in me. Every practice, every game, the way he coached me, the way he made me feel about myself. So I understand what you're saying. A coach can have a tremendous impact on your life and how you look at things. And neither one of them were touchy-feely, kumbaya coaches. They were tough, hard, not stubborn, but like driven men. And it had a tremendous influence on a young age, because my father was my coach, I think 4th or 5th grade. It might have been 5th grade. I'm getting old. I'm 51 now. but Mr. Moriyama was 4th grade all the way up until I graduated high school. Every spring, every summer, and every fall, I would play in the Asian leagues, because I'm half Japanese. And so he had a tremendous impact on me and made me feel like I can do special things on the basketball court. And it, led to a 9-year professional career, 7 years in the NBA, a Final Four, 2-time All Big 8, 16th pick in the NBA draft. And I think that those 2 men, at a young age, had a tremendous impact on me and made me believe in myself. I think a lot of hard work goes into it. Well, believing in yourself is not enough. I think it's a lot of hard work, but they helped me with that because they did make me believe in myself.
Well, usually I don't talk about that until later, but I want to go with that because it never ceases to amaze me because, obviously we want to talk about the bubble and George Floyd and what I find interesting is when I see evolution from a coach. And Matt has come on this show, Doherty, your good friend, like a brother to you. Yeah. And he said that he has had a 180 when it comes to kneeling and George Floyd and what it meant to kneel and systemic racism. And he said he just didn't understand it. And he made mistakes as a coach at Carolina. And so I'm just curious, we'll fast forward and then rewind again, because along the same things that you were just talking about, because I think it's important to have people see your evolution. And so the reason I asked that question is because I personally didn't know that you were half Japanese. So that's interesting to me because now, no matter what you've been through your whole life, you have a different level of sensitivity. So on this show, we talk about obviously Black Lives Matter, bet on women, stop Asian hate. There's a lot of things that we talk about. And it's important to us that we send that message. And so I'm white, so I'm sharing it with mostly white people that will probably listen, and maybe Japanese people listen to you. And when people of color come on the show, even if it's the same message, a lot of people will only listen to them. So there has to be this united front. So the first question I want to ask is, from those experiences, not only just your upbringing and being in the space of being half white and half Japanese, what did that teach you about empathy? Like I care about your story and how you're impacting intersections of race and sports and mental health and leadership and how you're being a better version of yourself today because you got Sports Deli is sponsored by SportRx, the leader in sport prescription eyewear. You can find them online at sportrx.com, and don't forget to enter the code DELI10 at checkout for your special 10% discount. And now back to this incredible interview right here on the Sports Deli.
I'll say this, every day I'm learning something new, because when you have 5 kids that are growing up in this world, you hear their point of view and you look to study and find out more. And all my life, I've basically been about basketball. And so as a coach, you find out really quickly and you're constantly learning. So when I grew up, 1993 is when I graduated from Kansas. There wasn't a lot of talk about social issues, to be honest with you. I'm in Kansas, which is a predominantly white university. I would say it's not the most diverse university in the world. We didn't talk about those things a whole lot. But now when you coach at a place like Florida Atlantic and you coach at a place like San Francisco in California, you're going to have
or in the NBA.
And then playing in the NBA. Like when I'm going to play in the NBA, I was the minority, to be quite honestly. Every locker room I walked into, I might see another Caucasian. I was not seeing any half Japanese guys on a roster. So you're constantly learning, experiencing new things. You have to listen. I think that's the biggest thing. You have to listen to the people that are around you. I have to listen to my kids, and we don't always agree. I come from a different generation. I come from a different time. They're experiencing things that I have no knowledge of, quite honestly, because I don't live in their shoes. I don't understand what they're going through. So for me, it's more about listening. It's more about trying to understand their point of view. It's about studying, which I never studied anything besides basketball, to be quite honest. When I was a secondary education major at Kansas, most of my teachings were on physical education because I knew I could talk about basketball. Right. So at 51, and to see what all these kids are going through and to see the impact of social media on these kids and how they're being judged and how sometimes they want to be judged, sometimes they want to be heard. Right. It's a lot. It's a lot that what these kids are going through. It's a lot for me to try to take in and understand what they're going through. So that's been a constant evolution for me, so it's a lot to deal with. But if you want to coach and you want to work with young people, you got to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. And like you said, it was different back then. So is there a disconnect now where there's an old school mentality which is what we had, play through the injuries or shut up and dribble. Not necessarily, but just, it's not a democracy. I've been coaching 30 years, and so I understand some of it, and you have to evolve, otherwise you're sort of going to get left behind. But where is that disconnect? Is it the kids don't necessarily relate all the time because either you and I are white, well, we're perceived as white. I'm Jewish, you're half Japanese. And so there's a relatability issue, or your old school language or your mentality or your energy or your vibration that comes across, is different than what they need now, which is instant gratification. If they can't hit the step back, and put people in jail right away and hit that floater or get the euro, it's frustrating. And when we were doing it, there was hours spent on reps, and we would grind in a different way, I guess you would say.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say with just the game of basketball, and this is no criticism of any coach, any type of organization. It's different now because of social media. You have to really do a great job when you're at a university, you're in a program, even at the high school level, college level, or even the NBA. You're really going to have to do your work, because kids nowadays, and this is not a criticism, they believe that scoring the basketball or like sensationalized plays or spectacular plays are what gets you recruited. And to an extent, it's true, it is. But also, you and I both know what wins basketball games is great defense, right? Protecting the rim, putting your body in front of the basketball, protecting the paint, closing out, defensive rebound, which is a physicality. I mean, you watch teams nowadays, they don't touch hands. They all put their hands close to each other, right, with COVID-19 and everything's going on. So now you're asking kids to physically block out other players. So this is the new frontier for coaches, to get people to understand the hard things, the things that maybe I didn't recruit you for, are now the things I'm going to ask you to do. And so with NIL and with the instant transfer, you're going to have to do a great job of really establishing a relationship and understanding your players. And they still may leave you, right? But you have to make that effort to understand their journey, how they got to this point, whether it's in college or the NBA. Because if you don't, right, there's really no loyalty, and there's no reason in their mind to do things that have never been asked of them, or I wouldn't say never, but not at a very high level asked of them to do, where it's physical, it's tough, it's at times could be very demanding of a young man or a young woman.
So to that point, sort of a joke, but not really, because the movie that you were in was sort of a play on life, right? Blue Chips. Yeah. And some of the things that happened in there and what you were asked to do initially versus what ended up happening and the role that you played in the movie versus what really happened in life back then, whether it was the book Raw Recruits. I remember that came out and there was a lot of controversy with that, with Syracuse. And, but we all know that people were paid. And now you just mentioned the NIL, the name, image, and likeness, that has changed with the NCAA as a result of the Supreme Court case, which is long overdue, that Ed O'Bannon really tried to spearhead and, finally came to a head. And the NCAA, if they had just gotten their act together maybe 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't even be at this point and they would still be making more money, but they blew it. And so back then, the recruiting process was different, right? You have a son that plays, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what level he is. I know he's a good player. I don't know if he's gonna, if he's aspirations to play at the level that you were at. But what are the differences? So because if you get back into the college game, this is a question that we ask that we think is important. We see Deion Sanders at an HBC. We see some of the landscape changing, and so it used to be, well, you didn't deal with a lot of the things that, maybe Roy Williams did. Maybe he was, similar to, what's the coach's name with the Seahawks? Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll.
So he's more of a holistic kind of coach, right? He's brought in all these kinds of people to under the umbrella of having a holistic culture.
Right.
And so what's the difference now? What would you do differently now if you got back in the college game versus then? Not just social injustice wise, but mental health, which we'll talk about. That's not as taboo anymore. And you really have to do more because the kids and the parents both, like you did back when, you didn't take a meal because it would have been a violation, and you let the coach know on the West Coast, and kids aren't necessarily going to do that nowadays, but you were really in tune, with rules and doing things the right way. Your dad taught you to do things the right way. But how would you do things differently now as a head college coach? Because, Lav's talked about it, Matt's talked about it, because the culture has changed.
Yeah. Well, I think number one, you have to make sure that young man understands you completely have his best interest at heart. And that is now first and foremost. It is. And it may be a reason why a lot of coaches have decided to get out of it or are getting out of it because, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, back when we grew up, it was like, hey, you're going to play for this team. Right. This is the opportunity you have to play for this team. Whereas now I think it's more about, hey, here are the things that we're going to do to help you develop and grow, not just as a basketball player, not just as a person, not just as a student athlete, but also your brand. How are we going to help your brand? Well, the one thing I'll say is if the person isn't right, if the student athlete portion of it isn't right, and then the player part of it isn't right, the brand's not going to be as good. So I think you really got to go through the process of what that young man or young woman is going to face.
Well, they won't be the best versions of themselves either if they're not really feeling whatever, choose the word, loved or appreciated or, 100%. Pushed, those types of things. And that's what you want. You want to have the best versions of themselves, even on a bad day. And that's what you bring to the table every day. And that's what you want. You're going to make mistakes too. You call up the wrong plays at the end of a game, or you make mistakes too, and you admit it.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this.
The Sports Deli is sponsored by Moolah Kicks. Moolah is MOOLAH, like money, moolah, and kicks, like shoes, one word. You can find them online at moolahkicks.com. And it's the first ever female-only brand basketball shoe. So it's a shout out to the basketball street culture, and it is also about fighting social injustice and gender inequality worldwide and here in the United States. And again, you can find them at moolahkicks.com. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli.
Back in my day, it was an open door policy to go see Coach Williams. And it was also an open door policy when I was a college coach. Come, if you need something, come see me. That won't work today. You're going to have to actively seek out those individuals on a day-to-day. Your most important recruits will be your current players, and you've got to make sure you know what's going on in their life. Hopefully, you'll get to the point where they'll share it with you, the good and the bad, because the closest players I have are the ones that had the strength mentally, to come and say, hey, this is going on in my life. And this is affecting me. And guess what? I was probably a much better coach for those guys. Still hard, right? Yeah. Still going to push them. But now I understand where they're coming from and what they've really got on the plate. Because as a 18 to 21, 22-year-old young man, if you don't understand or have a really good grasp of what's going on in their life, you can't possibly coach them in the way that really fits their individual, what Jay Bill is talking about, his experience. You can't make that experience as good as you can make it if you don't really understand. So for me, when those guys, and there was maybe 3 or 4 at the most, that approached me like, this is going on, this is real, and I'm struggling with it. I also had a pretty good relationship with those guys that had continued on after they graduated. You know what I mean? Well, you're going to have to do that now for 13 scholarship players, your walk-ons, your guys that maybe aren't, the 1, 2, and 3 people on your, play chart of who you're running plays for, because all those guys have an impact on your team, have an impact on every single individual in that room. We had a transfer problem at San Francisco, to be quite honest, right? But when walk-ons are unhappy, guess what? That impacts your locker room. That impacts your players' experience. So you've got to make a conscious effort of understanding and knowing what's going on. And you can't just have an open door policy. You have to be able to open up that door to their life, right? To understand. And that's going to be it's a grind. But if you want to coach, that's what you have to do, because you want to positively impact young people and make sure that you give yourself and give them a chance to have the best experience possible.
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that. During the pandemic early on in 20, there was a lot of coaches during the NABC series that came on, and it was very interesting to hear how so many of them have pivoted, and how so many of them couldn't enjoy even the winning, because not only the pressure, but they just were approaching it in a way that they were talking about it completely different than what you were just talking about. And so I guess that's what you learn as you coach over time, that you're so immersed in something that if you're so deep in the forest, you can't see the trees. And it's hard, right? Like I've been a college coach for 23 years, and I wasn't at your level or in the NBA level, but still, when you're committed to something, you're immersed in it, and it's hard to see anything else. And so, to then put more energy into some of these other areas, it's draining. It's tough. Like you got to win or you're gone.
Well, I think the process is what you got to really get yourself into. And I think the first, and Stan had a great thing. He used to always say when we were in Detroit and New Orleans, he said the most important things in this organization are the people in that locker room. And he does a fantastic job of reaching out and making sure he's establishing relationships with those guys, because he knows he's a hard-driven coach, and he knows there's a high level of accountability. Sure. So this one was really difficult with the pandemic, because we literally couldn't spend at the start of the season more than, I want to say, 30 minutes at one time in closed defined quarters. So it made it really, this is the first time I think he really felt like I wasn't able to establish relationships, but I don't know how I could have. You know what I mean? It was going to be a phone call or a text message, and it wasn't going to be face-to-face interaction, but that's what it's going to take now. And so we talk about the process. So of those 13 or 17 players that you have on your roster, you've got to get to the point where they know you're going to seek them out, and therefore now they feel more comfortable to seek you out. The open door policy won't work anymore. And you've got to be about the process, really driven about the process as opposed to the results. Because if you know them in depth, you'll know what's going on academically, good or bad. You'll know what's going on socially, good or bad. You'll know what's going on and the impact it's going to have at their home, back home, wherever they're at. And then when they step on the court, which I think is what you're trying to get to as a coach, you do want to impact. I've always said, my goal is for my guys to have something that they love to do, that they can make a living at when they're 40, because there's going to be a time where the ball's going to stop bouncing, right? And really 40 is probably too late. It's more now probably 28, 24, 22, but that's really what I always talked about. Well, in order for me to do that, you're going to have to do that on a day-to-day. And so, once again, your most important recruits are your players that are in the locker room, and that's every single one of them, because they all have an impact.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's great to hear you say that. And the journey is scary for a lot of the guys, because the court is their sanctuary, and off the court, a lot of times what they've had to endure growing up, and some of the stuff maybe we don't even know about, they're trying to navigate that or forget about it in a lot of instances. And so to get them to understand that it does take time to heal from those wounds, just like it takes time for you to get better at curling or flaring or, whatever it is that you're doing, it's the same kind of concept. You just have to be patient with yourself and not be too hard on yourself. And just as long as you're putting the effort in, then, good things will come out of it. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about, Coach Williams, who just retired, and, what your experience was like in college, because, time flies, right? It's 30, years later, basically. And I mean, I remember my college days like it was yesterday. And like I said earlier, before we did the official intro, you know, the 3-point line had just come about. Craftiness was just sort of starting back then. Like I teach as a professional basketball skills trainer now, the KJ, the Kevin Johnson, which nobody uses in the NBA, even to this day, or the WNBA, and I still teach it. And the Steve Smith. So then Steve Smith did that one move almost every time down the floor, either to create space or take away space. Obviously, he was 6'8", so it helped, you know, go Sparty. But, you know, in all seriousness, like, what was it like there? Because I've asked Rashawn this question when he came on. I've asked Matt this question. He played with Michael Jordan. I've asked all the UCLA guys that have come on, and there was a disconnect for 20 years there after Jim Herrick got fired because of, you know, just a lot of turmoil. So how is it at Carolina, you know, the brotherhood, and not only when you're playing there and just the history? It's not just Jordan, it's James Worthy and it's Sheed and the list goes on, you know, and then now like how it is just staying in touch with those guys.
Well, you know, I'll say this. All of these institutions, Kansas, where I went to school, Carolina, UCLA, it used to be a goal. Like when I was growing up, UCLA was my school. I wanted to go to UCLA. I wore a UCLA starter's jacket. That was something that was really important to me. Like that was a goal to get there and be a part of that. I think today's young men, and this is not a criticism, it's just, it is what it is. It's a reality. It is a vehicle for them to get to where they want to get to. And that's different. That's a different mindset. That's a different way of looking at things. And that includes Kentucky, that includes Carolina, that includes Kansas, that includes UC, all the blue bloods.
Michigan,
right? It's now a vehicle to get to what they want. I heard a coach say, hey, we don't want to just beat Duke and Carolina. We want to beat the Ignite, the NBA G League Ignite. We want to show them that that's a vehicle for them to get to where they want to get to, which is the NBA, which is going to work at a very low percentage, to be quiet, because a very low percentage, as good as the Ignite was, I want to say 4 of their players didn't make it. They did not get drafted, you know, in the first round or in the lottery. So you have to understand there's going to be some failure in that as well. So knowing that has to, you know, also determine how you're going to approach this, because the brotherhood that I had at Kansas with Adonis Jordan and Eric Pauley and Richard Scott, and, you know, and then, you know, Danny Manning hired me for a job. He's a Kansas guy. Justin Bauman was a student manager at Kansas. He's one of my really good friends. There's a brotherhood there because we went to school for 4 years. We didn't see it as a vehicle. We saw it as an opportunity. Yeah. So that's going to present some unique challenges for coaches nowadays. Like I said, it's why I believe some of these programs, their coaches are deciding to move on, quite honestly, because it's a different way of looking at things. But if you want to coach, and this is probably a too harsh phrase, but it's adapt or die. You're going to have to adapt to today's young people, what they're trying to do. And then again, through all that, you have to constantly be showing our young people what they can be and not what they are, where they want to go and how we're going to get there. And so that's a little different way of phrasing, because back in the day, like I said, and I'm not offended by this. When Coach Williams told me I was the most selfish player in 27 years of coaching, I took it as a challenge. I took that as a challenge. Okay, cool. I'm going to show you. Well, the kids nowadays, they're not going to respond to that. I was second on the team in assists. I think Adonis had, you know, less than 10 more assists than I did. That was a big thing for me to show to Coach Williams, like, no, I'm not selfish. I'm selfish about winning. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know. I didn't know how to win at that point, but that helped me become a more team-oriented player. Whereas today's kid, you say that to a kid nowadays, they might shut you out forever, especially when you do it in front of the whole team. Like that was said in front of the whole team, So that was, and I'm not mad about it. That I grew up in that era.
Yeah, it's a different era. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that in 2021.
Yeah.
You better really know your young man.
Right.
You better really know what makes him tick. And maybe Coach Williams did. He's a much smarter man than I ever was. Ever am going to be. But you got to really know your players if you're going to put something like that on the line, because kids nowadays. So it goes back to what we said again. You're going to have to invest in your young people and really understand who they are, what makes them tick, what their experience is like, right? How they impact others, how others impact them. And then at that point, you can understand how I'm going to coach this young person to help him achieve and show him what he can be.
So have you stayed in touch with him over the years I
texted him on his 71st birthday, and, he hit me back which was nice. But here's the other thing that people don't understand. So he's 71. He just turned 71 years old, and he coached 30 years, and you got 4 to 5 kids a year. That's 150 kids that are in his family.
Right.
You know what I mean? So and I know Coach Smith viewed it the same way, that he's looking after them intently. I remember this story by Larry Brown. He shared. Larry Brown was I want to say at Denver or at a place, and he was talking about Coach Smith gives him a call, and he says, "Hey, I need you." He asked him, "Who are you drafting for the NBA draft?" And Coach Brown said, "I got the guy picked out. I know who I'm drafting. We got it all laid out." And Coach Smith said, no, you're not. I need you to draft this young man that played for Coach Smith. Okay.
Right.
And Coach Brown was like, Coach, hold on a second. I know who I'm going to get. I know what we need. This is the young man I got. And then on draft night, he picked the guy that Coach Smith told him to draft. Okay.
Wow.
So that's pretty powerful stuff. And years later, he asked Coach Smith, why did you ask me to do that? And Coach Smith said, he said, "Larry, I knew you were going to be okay, but I didn't know if he would be if you didn't draft him." So
wow. Who was that player?
Really, I can't, I don't know. And
you remember?
I wouldn't say anyways.
Yeah.
But it talks about that power of family.
Yeah.
At University of North Carolina, that obviously Larry played for Dean, and worked under him for a short period of time, and
now coaching with Penny.
Now coaching with Penny. So but it talks about the power of that program and how they really looked after each other, and that's a powerful thing. Well, now with one and done, with that's going to change. That's different now, and so it's just really interesting to see. Thinking back in 1993, what I went through, and being in 2021. Well, Coach Smith and Coach Brown go even further than that, but that is constantly changing and evolving, and these programs, these blue bloods, are going to have to adjust to that.
So talk about your playing career and how that, did you think after transferring and you had you helped your team to the Final Four, and you had some good numbers, you were obviously projected as a first rounder, but was that a goal, like when you transferred from Northwestern to Kansas, that you really wanted to, you had aspirations to try and play in the league?
Yeah, it was, but again, we talked about this. It wasn't the end all be all. I knew I was gonna. I'll say this: I knew I had to play because I had no idea what else I could do. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to coach eventually.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what else I was really going to be any good at if I wasn't able to make some money playing basketball. So playing at Kansas and playing in a Final Four and trying to win a national championship, that was the end all be all in terms of that's the number one goal for me. And then after that, okay, let me start thinking about other goals.
How was it being a white guy in the NBA though?
It's different. No, it's different. You walk into every locker room. I'm from suburban San Jose, like not a big city, not a basketball mecca. Nobody was writing stuff about me when I was a junior in high school, sophomore in high school. A lot of these guys are pretty well known, especially your better players.
But were they trying to punk you in the NBA? Or they're like trying to rip you?
I never had a bad teammate. I really didn't. I had guys that maybe I didn't always see eye to eye with on things, but I didn't have any bad people
Yeah, yeah.
And there are some bad people in the NBA. I won't say who I think are, but there are some people that I wouldn't want to be around. But I was blessed and fortunate. In 7 years playing in the NBA, I had all great teammates. They wanted to win. They were about a lot of the right things. They had a different way of looking at the world maybe than I did,
Right.
but didn't have bad guys.
Yeah.
There's some people maybe that that I was around. I was like, oof, I would never want to be around that person outside of a game. But and I'm talking about guys that people think are like Allen Iverson is a great guy.
Right.
Like Vernon Maxwell is a great guy.
Yeah.
But people see that 30-second snippet, the practice thing. They don't even understand all that went into that with Allen. People see Vernon going into the stands and going after a fan. But those are snippets. And if you look at every human being, they've had moments that they would look back and say, yeah, I could have handled that a little bit better. And I'm not including Allen's timeout rant. That's not one that I thought he handled that the way he felt he should have handled. I don't think he should regret that. Vernon might, but I don't know what was said to him. So I'm really one that doesn't pass a lot of judgment on people that if I don't know all the facts, I'm not gonna sit, because it's not my place to do so. And even when I do know all the facts, I still may reserve the right to say, hey, I'm not judging this person because I don't know everything that's going on in their life to get to that point. There may be a word, there may be a phrase that triggers them, and what you try to do most of all is try to help them in those situations. When Allen wanted to fight Dennis Rodman, I was just trying to help Allen. Like, hey, this is not something we need right now, and so at those moments, it's about more help than it is about judgment.
So then, you go to coach in the NBA, and so now you're on the other side, after coaching in college, and, had probably just memories that you'll keep with you for forever as a player, just, and you've leveraged it as you should. And you just talked about a little bit of the fan involvement or over involvement. And so as a coach, what were the differences? Obviously, managing personalities is obviously a big one from college to the pros. But what were some of the other differences? And do you think the NBA is doing a good job with the situation with the fans? The Sports Deli is sponsored by PSK. You can find them online at lids.com, pskcollective.com, tjmax.com, walmart.com, and now Kohl's Department Store at kohls.com. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli.
I think they're working really hard at it. And I know this about the NBA. They're going to go into every single minute detail that they can. I think that they're really smart about that. I think that there's things that are even going to come up on the horizon that maybe they're not going to be prepared for. But again, they're going to attack it in a way that they can figure it out. I think the most important thing with pro players, even more so than college, because when you're working in the NBA, you're working with men. You're really even the young guys. Like my time with Zion was phenomenal. My time with Brandon Ingram was phenomenal. Zoe, phenomenal. They really, because they are NBA players, in my opinion, they are the finest when it comes to their craft. They are truly that, not 1%, but 0.0000, maybe 0.001%. They're truly unique and special at what they do. So you've got to be really good at making sure that they know I can help you get better.
Right.
I think that they have their families now, they have their people. But if you can show them, yes, you care about them and you're really going to work your tail off to help them be better versions of themselves on the court, then they're going to listen. They're going to respond.
That's what they care about the most.
An NBA player, and I'm sure the NFL is probably the same. I don't know. Baseball, I mean, you're talking about just really like they're most like a golfer. Like you can never hit a golf ball the way a Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson. Right. They've been completely and really well trained, and they've conditioned their body and their mind at a very high level. So,
well, and they want to get to that second and third contract, to be honest with you. I mean, that's what they want.
I think KD he wants to be the best at his craft or the best version of himself in that craft. So if you can show, and I believe the same thing about Brandon, and there's some things, no player's perfect, and they have things that they need to work on, and you got to show them why they need to work on them. But I love the fact we're playing OKC, and I'm like, B.I., you're the one guy that can guard this dude. He took the challenge, and he wanted that. So it's also a journey for them. But if you can show them that this makes you better, like this is how we're going to get better, they definitely respond to those things, and they want those things. So for me as a coach, it was a lot of fun. My year in Detroit, my year in New Orleans, with all the craziness of the pandemic, and traveling to Portland and just seeing the devastation that was going on there in a great city. But you see all the tents, you see the homelessness, you see the boards on the buildings, and you see some unbelievable murals on some of those boards.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But even through all of that stuff, and obviously being let go at the end of the season, like I loved being around those guys and trying to figure out ways to help and inspire them. Even if it was just a 3-minute video, just to get them laugh, get them to see the vision, and to get them to pursue it.
I have, over the last year and a half, we've, like I said earlier, pivoted with the show and talked more about issues that I think run a little bit deeper than just talking sports. But I have felt somewhat complicit, even though I was integrated at a young age in Detroit. I was the only white guy on my high school team. And I've learned a lot over the years as a coach, starting my 30th year at both the college level and the high school level, both men, women, and boys and girls. And so I like to ask this question because it's always interesting to hear people's opinions about, how you've changed in terms of being an ally since the death of George Floyd, and how you listen differently now. And then are we going in the right direction, not only in sports, but, off the court, in terms of obviously speaking up and dribbling, but with policy changes and things of that nature to bridge this gap, because there's still two different sets of laws in this country in a lot of ways?
Well, I think the first thing is you got to educate yourself. You got to really look into what's going on with the system, what's going on with the systemic racism, defund the police, all of these different things that are going on. You better educate yourself. You really do. And so I don't believe in this is my truth. I believe in really looking into what's really going on here with what happened with George Floyd, all that went into it. That was a devastating thing that impacted so many people. So when that happens, you want to educate yourself. You want to know and that's really challenged me as a coach, because you do have to listen, you do have to read, you do have to research, because you want to have a great grasp of what's going on and understanding that point of view that is different than mine. I grew up in suburban San Jose. I didn't have very many. A problem for me was having a pimple on on my nose walking in school. Like that's a whole different problem than what some of these young people are going through every day. So listening, reading, researching, those are things that all of us need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other issue that is people have been more open about is mental health. And so how did the organizations that you've been a part of handle any of these types of issues, in this case mental health, to make them feel like it's okay to talk about, you're not going to get ostracized, or things aren't going to happen, you're not going to get cut necessarily, that it's a safe space?
Well, I think the first thing, like this year, New Orleans was the first year that we had a team psychiatrist.
That's unbelievable, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that our players could go to. She was a great lady. She wasn't necessarily a basketball person, but it was something that our players felt comfortable. A majority of them felt comfortable talking about. At the same time, they also know it is a business, right? They need to know that. But through your process and your experience here, I think that they really wanted to make it a positive experience, whether it was for 3 years, whether it was for 3 days. Like they wanted the players to feel like, hey, this is a positive experience. I do understand it's a business. I do understand we have to win ball games, but they're going to do everything they can to make sure that I have a positive experience.
Yeah. And so do you think colleges are doing a good job as well and having things in place to sort of have those safeguards and checks and balances for the kids?
Well, I think it's got to continue to evolve.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that we're gonna, it's funny. I got a text from a friend of mine saying that the former school that my kids went to, there was a shooting at the school. My kids went from a, really private school in San Francisco to all of a sudden a very public school in North Carolina. And a shooting happened. So you gotta read the report. You gotta find out what's going on. You gotta check on the people that there to make sure that they're doing okay.
Wow.
But we're going to continue to have issues. And here's the thing is, you want to be proactive, number one, to try to alleviate or stop some of these things from happening, but also how you're going to react when it does happen, because we're not going to be able, there's only one perfect person that walked on this earth. His name was Jesus Christ, right? He's the one that had all the answers. We don't.
Yeah.
We are fallible. We do make mistakes, but how we react to those mistakes are going to be really important. I'm really, really blessed and fortunate. I've worked hard, but I always say this: I haven't worked a day in my life, because when you love what you're doing, are you really working?
Yeah, for sure. I love it. All right, let's get to the rapid fire. Sports Deli is sponsored by City Lokes, CITYLOCS. You can find them online at citylokes.com, where you can go and make your own personalized license plate hats. They're so cool. You got to check them out. And don't forget to enter the code TheSportsDeli at checkout for your special 10% discount. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli. You study other coaches, obviously, like Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, basketball coaches, the Van Gundy brothers. Okay, so first, would you choose Nick Saban or Bill Belichick?
I always go with the teacher over the student.
That's right.
So right now, Bill Belichick, he's different than Saban. I think Saban is a little bit more, especially in front of the microphone, a little bit more dynamic. I don't think Coach Belichick would have any problem with that either. I don't think he would care. But yes, I do think that even in today's game, Coach Belichick is more old school.
Yeah.
Nick Saban is old school that has integrated some new school into what, because he's working with younger kids too. And
Totally.
So he does understand, and professional sports and college sports are completely and totally different. Different. Yeah. There's no recruit. I mean, there's recruiting in professional basketball, but it's different. It's a different type of recruiting. Whereas with Alabama, even though it is the program, 1, 2, or 3, whatever you want to place it, he still is always thinking recruiting and how do I get the best players. So his phrasing of things, it's a little bit more new school, because he understands how important the recruiting aspect is to it.
What coach did you learn the most from that you didn't expect to learn the most from?
Well, Stan is the best. Stan Van Gundy.
Today's giveaway is compliments of PSK Collective. Be inspired in PSK, where their clothing promotes inclusivity, empowerment, and equality by supporting female athletes through the Women's Sports Foundation. So today's giveaway is a women's large cutoff. And you can see the nice logo there in the middle. And it's pink. And so today's question is, and again, make sure you put giveaway in the subject heading in an email to us and send it to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. And so you're going to hear Coach Walters talk about who his most influential coach was in his career, in addition to Coach Williams, and tell me the one thing that he says that this person did not have, that if he had had him, that would have made him one of arguably the best coaches in the history of the league, along with the Pat Rileys and the Chuck Dalys and the Phil Jacksons and, those types of coaches who all had, this type of player, but unfortunately was never afforded that opportunity. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli.
The only place he didn't exceed was he didn't have a generational player at his time. Like Zion can be that generational player, but he didn't have a Michael, a LeBron, a Magic, you know, a Kareem, that player that if you look at all the great coaches, usually 99, I'd be hard pressed to say they didn't have that generational player, right? They always did. Pat Riley's great. Yeah, he is great. And it is hard coaching great players. It is. It's a bigger challenge in some ways coaching a great player. But I think those Hall of Fame coaches, I played for him. Pat Riley had Magic, Kareem, LeBron, you know, like Shaq, right? And Shaq with Dwayne, was at the top of his game. I think that's really important. But Stan's organization, how intelligent he is, and he's not just intelligent about basketball, but he's truly a guy that is actively and will fight for social justice. It's important to him.
Him and Pop.
Oh yeah, no question. Like he will fight, and to the point where it can harm himself. He doesn't care. He believes in what he believes in, and he will fight for it till the end. But he actually studies it. Like his workload, his ability to work, it's better than anyone I've ever been around.
Wow.
His you know, how he plans for a practice, how he plans for a season, how he plans for each day. Our guys knew when they were going to have days off. And this is with an NBA schedule during the COVID virus. Okay. COVID-19. He has it broken down. So he's the one that in terms of organization, detail, understanding the plan, understanding the adjustments to the plan, understanding the adjustment to the adjustment to the plan, and then understanding the adjustment to the adjustment to the adjustment to the plan. Like that was, I've never seen anything like it in my years in coaching. You know, Bob Byer is a great coach that nobody knows of. And then obviously I've been blessed. Like Pat Riley, I always say the best motivational speaker, a little bit more old school, but he has great credibility because of the rings and what he's been able to do. Chuck Daly was the best psychiatrist or psychologist I've ever been around, could deal with any type of player, and just had a way about him that players responded and respected. Larry Brown was one of the best at also adjustments in a different time, but he could find a team and he knew how to get a team to play at its highest level. So I've been blessed to see these things. I mean, obviously Coach Williams at the college level, but Stan Van Gundy, and he's been really, really good to me, giving me opportunities to work for him so I could really see it in depth every single day. But I think also, even though he's in some ways old school, his commitment to the world.
Yes, life outside of basketball.
You know what I mean? Like, outside of basketball, what's going on in our country, in politics, in social justice, in mass incarceration. Right. Like he is all, and he beats me by, I'm like a infant newborn baby compared to the experience and the time that he'll put into those things, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and everyone's different, and you know, everyone has the right to do things in their own timelines and their own ways. But I have been critical of Tom Brady, for example, on this show, because with his platform, there's not another white guy in America, or maybe in the world, that could say Black Lives Matter, and he hasn't said it once. And so when you have the outpouring of support from white people like we've never seen before, you know, but the reality is that people across the board are not going to listen to Stan necessarily. A lot will, maybe more listen to Pop, but then after Pop could be Brady, and who knows what he could do if he would do things more publicly versus, you know, behind the scenes, because obviously he's well loved and beloved in the locker room. I just wish there were more people, you know, from the white perspective that were out there sharing their perspectives so that, you know, we could educate more people, because, you know, we still got a long ways to go. Okay. So fascinating stuff. Would you rather snuggle with a giraffe or a penguin?
I'd probably go with a penguin.
If you had a pet parrot, what would you teach it to say?
I teach him to say, yes, honey. Because every time my wife asked me to do something, I used to look at him. He'd say, yes, honey.
Pick and roll or pick and pop?
I was pick and pop. I would, and I really probably slip to a pop because they're switching my pick.
Yeah. Right. There you go. Absolutely. Yeah. Floater or Euro?
Pull up. I'd shoot a pull up. I'm not into Euros, and I'm old school. So
you and Dan Dickow, man.
Yeah. And neither one of us were great NBA players.
Well, you had some longevity.
Dan had some good years. Dan had some good years, I would think. Yeah, I would think Dan had some good years. Yeah,
yeah, both he did, like that stop and
pop. He did go to Gonzaga, so I automatically take some points off of it with that guy.
Oh boy, here we go. The smoke is coming. Okay, so speaking of Brady or Montana, you being a Northern California.
Ooh, man, that's a tough one. I mean, obviously, Tom Brady has the rings, but I grew up in the Joe Montana era. I mean, so if I had to pick a quarterback for one game, wow, I'd take Joe Montana. I would. I might be wrong.
Thinking with your heart or your head there?
A lot with my heart.
Absolutely. Hoop dreams or white men can't jump?
Hoop dreams. Hoop dreams. Yeah, I liked White Men Can't Jump, but hoop dreams. Because I was just on their podcast. It just dropped today, actually. Yeah. And it was such a truthful documentary about what young people can go through, like what Arthur went through, like going to a school that was predominantly white, not being able to stay at that school, having to pay his bill to get his transcripts back. And I'm not judging the school, but that he went through a lot, and found a way to ultimately get a Division I scholarship. What William Gates went through, and the pressure of trying to be the next Isaiah Thomas, and then going through injury and having a child and persevering and making it to Marquette and ultimately getting his degree. Like that was really powerful for me at a time where I'd already experienced those things, but it hadn't been talked about at that level with that amount of depth of truth.
Yeah, I knew you were on there. That's why I asked that question. So that was solid. That was good. Yeah, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I've listened to snippets of it. It was really interesting. Step back three off an elevator screen or a corner three?
Well, step back three because I knew I could always get it, especially going right. Going right because it got to my left hand.
That's right.
I could get that step back three. They didn't shoot it. We didn't shoot a whole lot back then, so it'd have been fun to do it in today's game. But my knee, literally my right knee, is so banged up that we'd have to do youth, body rejuvenation at the highest level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alonzo Mourning or Dikembe?
Alonzo was the ultimate warrior. I don't know Dikembe, so I'm very, very biased.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. Alonzo, after a loss, would be in the weight room already. We'd listen to Coach Riley talk, and Alonzo went right back to work. I remember losing a game. The next day, we're doing our off day, which was on a bike, by the way. We'd get on bikes.
Right.
And we would ride. And sweat. And Coach Riley would talk to us and have his blue card out. And, we'd get off the bikes. And on that particular, it wasn't an off day. We were going on the court, and Pat had to push Alonzo off the court because, no, I can't have you practice today. And Alonzo was the ultimate warrior, completely committed to work.
Wow.
It was a phenomenal thing. And I always said this, and him and Timmy were our best players. Timmy was, I thought, our best player. Alonzo was our best worker and our franchise, the face of the organization.
Yeah.
But to have a guy like that with that kind of work ethic just raised everyone's level of work ethic.
Are you talking about Hardaway?
No, I'm talking about Alonzo. Now, Timmy would tell you what he thought.
Yeah.
And if it was an off day, he was like, because he was older. His knee was quite
right.
I'm taking this off day if you're giving it to me, Pat.
Yeah,
Alonzo had none of that. Alonzo's like, no, I'm going every day, every second. He was completely and totally just the ultimate soldier.
That's cool. Trying to get Pat on because Pat was Don Kojus's roommate.
Okay.
In the
you
NBA.
better work that. You better work that angle then, because Pat is hard. Pat is hard to get on these things. He says he wants to be in the background, but but I think he just is really, really picky about what
Yeah,
he will
totally.
do.
It's funny. It's the same thing that one of the people that work in the Aces organization about Bill Lambier. He told me he may come on, but he better have a good round of golf, because if he has a bad round of golf, forget it. You got no shot at it.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
Dick Vitale, Bill Walton, or Steve Lavin as an announcer?
Oh gosh, I like Steve. You know, Steve's a Bay Area guy.
Yep.
Bill Walton. Every time you meet Bill Walton, and if you've met him multiple times, it doesn't matter. He will come up to you. He will shake your hand.
Yep.
He will say your whole name, Rex Walters. Hey, Bill Walton, great to meet you.
Right. Totally. I've known Bill a long time out here in San Diego. Yeah.
Really funny. So yeah, I can listen to Bill and I can listen to Lav. Like I can listen to, and Dick Vitale, even though we got into it a long time ago.
Right.
He was great. He was great for college basketball.
Totally.
People really tuned in. So I don't think you can lose with any of those three.
So during a timeout, would you rather draw up a play down 2 with 5 seconds left with the ball, down 3 with 8 seconds left with the ball, or down 3 with 36 seconds to go with the ball, obviously having to go for a 2-for-1 in that situation?
I'll take down 2 because I got a great time. I'm going to get a quality look down 2 for 3. Are we on the road or are we at home?
We'll say on the road.
Then definitely I'll take the down 2, 5 seconds to go, and I'll definitely get us a quality shot. One time I didn't, and Chris Adams saved me. He hit a really tough 3 to tie the ball game. But yeah, I can get us a pretty good look with 5 seconds to go to get a 3 to win.
So if you got no timeouts left, are you drawing up a zone and a man play?
I think you're always what a lot of teams won't go zone, so you better scout really well and what they'll do after a timeout.
Yeah.
But most of my plays, all of my plays out of timeouts, I want to have something, 1 or 2 plays that'll be great against man or zone, and you're actually gonna go over it in the time. Hey, if they're man, this is what we're running, right? This is what we're doing against the zone. It's the same play, but this is how we're setting these screens.
Interesting. So what's the most successful component? A screen the screener?
Sometimes it's a tight curl to a screen. Sometimes it's a slip. I mean, you've got to have a great understanding of who you're playing and what they do. Not just from a scheme standpoint, but what their players like to do. Some teams will point switch. Some teams come together on contact with their switches. Some teams are going to switch 1 through 4, 1 through 5. Some teams, if they have their big on the floor for whatever reason, maybe Coach Pops gets criticized for having Tim Duncan out of the game when Ray Allen hits that 3. But at the time, it was more about switching. So they didn't have them, but that's why they didn't give up the rebound. So Coach Stan says this, and he says that the only right decision is the one that works.
Right. Totally. Are you surprised? Because for a long time it was about ESPN showing the dunks and the Jordan era, and that's what people were working on. And now Steph Curry has obviously revolutionized the game in a whole different way. Did you ever imagine it would get to this point where the skill set of the players are where they are, where it's not just 1 through 6 or 7, but literally every guy on the roster can break someone down with 7 seconds to go on the shot clock and get downhill in a hurry and can shoot pretty well too, except, some of the players obviously are playing bully ball. But I mean, it's amazing to me. I can't stand watching so many pick and rolls personally, but the skill stuff is just fascinating to see how they read footwork and creating and taking space away. I mean, it's as a pro skills trainer, I love watching that stuff.
Well, it's funny because now you see a lot of chase action where guys will throw and go back and get it just because it's hard to guard than your traditional pick and roll. And so we're seeing more of that. We're seeing more movement stuff. We're seeing more pistol action. We're passing and getting it back or faking the handoff. So, but yes, the skill level of players now, it amazes me. When I think of how much different my game. I was an A to B straight line drive guy,
right?
And catch the 3, get to the rim, or get to your pull up. And so today's game, you have to guard so many more things. Like my son's skill set is so much better than mine. He's not 6'3", he's not 190 pounds, but his skill set and his ability to pass. I'm not going to let him watch this because I don't want him to hear this. But his skill set,
his IQ,
is so much better than mine at that age. Because I was a shooter, I was a straight line driver, and then I had the pull up game. Well, he's got so much more than that. So it is amazing. And then you watch NBA players, it's like, wow, what these guys are able to do. It's truly like, I got to coach Luke Kennard. His skill set was so good at 6'5", 6'6".
Oh,
and
great player.
He's a rotational guy in the NBA. And I was like, wow,
right.
He's pretty impressive. It was fun for me to work with a guy like that.
Let me ask you about your daughter. Because, talk about betting on women a lot. And so obviously she's had to navigate some different spaces herself. How was it being a girl dad and helping her to navigate her spaces? And now she's with the Timberwolves. Obviously I mentioned that earlier, but how was that?
You just get to see a different perspective. Like if I didn't have daughters, I wouldn't totally have understood the whole weight room, NCAA weight room thing. I wouldn't have understood it.
Ugh.
When I was in college, I wouldn't even have thought about it. I would have just kept moving on in my Twitter feed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I just couldn't relate. But seeing how it affected my daughter, and then as a mom, as a girl dad, like you don't want your daughter to experience something like that or made to feel that way. So it did impact me in a big way. And now to see her journey now as a coach, like she literally left today.
Yeah.
She left 2 days to drive to Minnesota. She's so excited. I was teasing my son. I said, we only got 2 people in the NBA club. It's me and my daughter. I was like, hopefully maybe you'll work hard. You can join it too. So just being able, and we don't always see eye on everything. We don't, but for me to see her perspective on things from a 24-year-old young woman that's going through different things, getting her master's degree from Santa Clara during the COVID virus and all the things that she had to go through, it's really good for me. Like we talk about adapt or die. Like she's one that's helped me adapt and understand what a young lady goes through, because I didn't understand that perspective when I was her age.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, my daughter's going to be 11. It's definitely a different. Whew, man. You've been there, done that.
Yeah, yes, I have.
Inside the NBA, Kenny, few more. Kenny, Shaq, Ernie, or Chuck?
I want Shaq and Chuck all the time. I may miss a game, but I tell you what, I will either tape it or I will watch the next game, because they usually have it on NBA TV just to watch the post game show. Like it is like, and it's funny. I did media training. Those guys follow nothing when it comes to media training, but they are funny and it is real. And they're not afraid to share. And I hope we never get that. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but it's coming from the heart. And when they're wrong, they say it, which is really, really, impressive too. Like, but it's really funny. I think that's the biggest thing. At the end of the day, I've coached the game my entire life. And so to see people having fun doing it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool, man. Mark Jackson or Jeff Van Gundy as an announcer?
Jeff Van Gundy,
he's phenomenal.
He's and nothing against Mark. I've got to meet Mark before and was obviously a great player. Played against Mark as well, but being now a coach and understanding his perspective on things, and I've got to watch Stan and Jeff go at each other. So, Jeff would come to some of our personnel meetings and they would literally just be in a full-fledged argument in front of 40 people, in the Pistons organization. It's classic stuff. And you can see that when Jeff and Mark are going at it. So, and I just enjoy Jeff's perspective on how he sees the game.
Stan or Jeff?
Well, he's given me two jobs. Right. He's helped me keep food on the table. We were able to, move back up to Michigan. He's been unbelievable to me, and I don't always know why, but it's always been a lot of fun for me to work for him. The staff meetings are what I'll miss the most. The staff meetings when he's telling stories and we're putting together game plans and practice plans. And He is never one that's shy or afraid to question himself, which I think is a great quality of a coach. I learned a lot about that, but he really looks at things deeply. And he really also genuinely cares about his players. Even when there's things about the games he may not like, he's gonna bend over backwards to try to make them the best version of themselves that they can be.
I was surprised that he was let go, to be honest with you. I thought he was a good fit, but everybody has their own philosophies on why they want to go in the directions they want to go in. So
yeah, it was a weird one. It was a weird one. We went from the 29th defensive team in the first half to the top 10 defensive team in the second half. Every single player that returned to the team from the previous year improved and off the chart. I think what we saw was Zion. Nobody saw that. Nobody was thinking point Zion. He was, and literally from the first time I talked to him, he's like, I want to see what this guy can do. Like, we're gonna put him in as many situations as possible. And he really researched it and how we can get the most out of Zion, get the most out of BI. And it wasn't good enough to get to the play. I mean, I always say this: we were 1.5 games back with 5 games to go, and then Steven Adams is out, Zion Williams is out, Brandon Ingram's out, and then I want to say Zoe is out. Yeah. So we were right there to get in the play-in, and if you get in the play-in, you got a chance. So it was disappointing, but hey, I know he's fine. I don't think he wanted to end that way, but I know this: he poured everything he had into that thing, and so I think when you do that, you don't have
feel
a lot
good about it.
regrets. Yeah, exactly.
Does Rick Carlisle really tape his ankles before games now? Still as a coach?
I don't know.
I heard that.
I got a chance. Rick was a young coach with the New Jersey Nets and was very thoughtful. It was a different NBA back then, but enjoyed my time with him. He's a great coach, championship coach, and so it's great to see him. He's working for Kevin Pritchard, who's a Kansas guy. So hopefully they can get that thing going. We got a nice roster.
Dishes, laundry, or vacuuming?
I'm a great vacuumer. I'm a great vacuumer. I enjoyed doing it. We got a great vacuum, and I did like 4 days in a row because we're trying to get our house. We're trying to get our house together, right? The show, because we're trying to sell it in New Orleans. And I worked my tail off, and I got good at it. I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it. So hopefully my wife doesn't watch this because she'll have me vacuuming every day.
Man, I've never heard someone so passionate about vacuuming. I'm sweating. That is freaking hilarious. Jay Kidd, Northern California guy, or Zeke, Isaiah?
Oof, I mean, Zeke did win championships. Okay. Yeah. I did play against Isaiah, and he was good, and he was at the end of his career. And I did play against Jason, and I beat him. So I don't know.
NCAA tournament. Yeah.
Jason's a great guy. I'm wishing him nothing but success in Dallas.
Yep.
Isaiah, I think is all time the second best point guard. I wouldn't say I'm an Isaiah Thomas fan, but you got to respect the game. You got to respect
after Magic.
After Magic. But Jason Kidd, like what he was able to do in New Jersey. Think about it.
Right.
Not Brooklyn, Brooklyn, New Jersey.
Right.
Had them on the cusp of championships, and all of a sudden, the great thing about Jason was all those teams now were passing the ball at a higher level. Like his impact.
Byron Scott.
His impact on that franchise. Like, I get it. In Brooklyn, okay, you got something to sell in Brooklyn. Nothing against New Jersey. I love my time in New Jersey.
Sure.
But I played in New Jersey. Okay, so I know that's a tough sell. And he was able to get them on the cusp of winning championships. That was pretty impressive.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and he's overcome some narratives that he's, admitted that he made some mistakes. So credit to him. And I think it's important that people of color get these opportunities as well in the NBA and other sports leagues, because it's a long time coming. Okay. Masters or US Open?
The Masters. Yeah. The Masters.
Yeah. Larry or Kobe?
Larry. I like for what? Like Larry, come on, man. I'm a white dude that wasn't the fastest, but so to Kobe's impact on our generation, like all of my players love Kobe. They'd get so mad at me when I'd say, yeah, he's a really great version of Michael Jordan. But I think that the impact of Kobe now was just, when you talk about Mamba mentality, you talk about how he invested in being a girl dad. That was kind of his phrase. You know what I mean? It all kind of, and then what he was able to do in Hollywood in terms of what he did with production was pretty impressive. So that's a tough one. But if we're talking about basketball, I'm going to go Larry Legend. Okay.
Yes.
Larry Legend. I thought I was going to get a chance to play for him. That was going to be one of the honors of my life because I hated the Boston Celtics, but loved watching Larry Bird.
Whew, boy. Yeah, that one missed out championship that the Pistons lost because of that inbounds play. That'll kill me forever. God bless America. So Zion or Ja Morant?
Zion. I think when we finally see, and nothing against last year's team, we didn't have great shooting last year. I'm hoping that Zion will have an experience with like real good floor spacing. We didn't have a great floor spacing team and defenders. If they can get that around Zion, like him and Brandon Ingram with great spacing and some defensive mindsets. And Bled was good. I loved Bled, loved Zoe. Steven Adams, great guy. But I don't know if that was the best roster for him. I think losing Zoe might hurt, but not having 2 point guards. We had 2 point guards on the floor together. Zoe was a little bit better shooter than Bled. It was kind of a different roster, and you're not going to get the best out of Zion and BI. And our guys were great about it. We'd always say, like, what is Zion and BI? I always see. We see guys hugging the paint on all their catches. So hopefully they'll get some floor spacers.
Yeah, the spacing is obviously important, and obviously you got to have good inside outs still, even though we're more positionless.
And that's what I mean by floor spacing and defense, because I think that they'll need length. I do think that we were still a smaller team. Brandon was 6'9", Zoe was a little bit taller for a point guard. Bled was a little undersized. And Steven, as tough as he is, I don't think it was a great matchup to have him with Zion together. So I think Valanciunas could be great for them. I really do.
Were you surprised that Giannis not only came back from that? If I watch that again, it just almost makes me want to throw up. I mean, and to play bully ball sort of the way he did is amazing to me. And I've gone on Clubhouse a few times in some of these rooms and talked about it. But I honestly think, as much as I've never been a Westbrook fan, I actually think with the Lakers, he could be a guard version of Giannis.
He could. I mean, he is a one-man fast break. I mean, Russell Westbrook and his mentality, how he's always on the attack. He's a walking triple-double. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the Lakers do. They really will. They need they need some shooting out there.
Yeah, of course.
They really do. So, Westbrook's a non-shooter. LeBron can make some shots, but he's more of a setup guy. And then, AD. So I got to really look at their roster a little bit closer, but it'll be interesting to see how those three work together.
I wish JJ Redick would have found a way to get there, man. That would have been interesting.
I think JJ, and even when I was there, JJ really wanted to be up in the Northeast. He really did. Yeah, he wanted to be up there and with his family and not have to move. Yeah. So hopefully he gets that. I really enjoyed watching his attention to detail. It really hurt us when we lost him. When we traded him, and nothing against the guys we brought in. Yeah. But he was a guy that understood Stan too. Understood what Stan was about. Would joke about it, brought levity to it. I thought was important, you got to be able to laugh at yourself.
Good locker room guy.
In a locker room, having a guy like that that's been through the wars that all of our guys really respect. I mean, you don't get as many guys as JJ's got on his podcast unless you're really liked and respected. So his podcast is fun to listen to. I don't listen to all of them, of course, but the few I have listened have been really interesting to listen to. Yeah,
him and Rex Chapman have had some good guests. It's been interesting to listen to those guys.
I didn't know Rex had a podcast. I need to listen to his too.
Oh, his are great. Him and JJ definitely do a good job. I've been trying to get JJ on before. He started his just because of some of the things that we talk about on here.
And JJ's like he's like making money off his things now.
Yeah, I know.
He's commercialized it.
Yep.
He was talking about it before. He's big time now.
He's big time.
Good luck. Who we get first, him or Pat Riley?
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll be impressed.
Yes, I'll do my best. Well, you gotta try, right? You gotta,
No
you gotta
question.
go. You gotta go for it. Okay, last question. If you have 5 people at the dinner table, past or present, could be sports or non-sports, anybody, who would you have at your dinner table?
Deanna Walters,
Wow.
Adam Walters, Rex Walters Jr.,
There you go.
Riley Walters,
Wait, someone's gonna get
Gunnar
left out.
Walters, and I'm gonna sneak a chair in for Ace Walters. I love, and I know my wife loves having dinner with the family. And now we've got
that's
2
cool.
out of the house. We've got a 19-year-old. We've got a kid that's going to be going to college soon. So
That's
anytime
awesome.
I can have my family home for dinner and we can all eat,
That's
and then
cool.
she'll put on music. She'll put on her John Mayer
Oh
while
boy.
she cooks the food, and we got the dogs begging for food. Those are always fun meals for me. So I'm a family guy.
That's awesome. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? You want to be obviously coaching, but what do you do in this situation as you? Do you have someone that, your agent, do they advocate for you, or do you put feelers out, or you just let it happen organically? Like how does it work for someone like you or Lav or Matt, looking to get back into it?
I do have an agent. And I also have an agent on the media side. Because I'm trying to get involved with some of those things as well. Because
Cool.
I enjoy talking basketball.
Clearly.
The really good stuff that we have, if you had any good stuff in this interview, was hopefully the basketball stuff.
Yeah.
But I enjoy both. Obviously, I would like another shot
Sure.
at coaching. I'm going to hopefully go after some college jobs, see if I can get involved with those. I had some feelers this year that I was kind of excited about, but it didn't work out, and I wasn't 100% sold on them. So we'll see what happens next year in the spring. It's a weird. I was talking to somebody else, like, it's a weird thing because I don't want to see any coach lose their job.
Yeah, of
You know what I mean?
course.
Like, I don't want to see that, but at the same time, I'd like, there's some jobs out there that I'd really be interested in. But until then, I'm going to work on the media side. And if something like that does pop and it's good for our family where I don't have to move as many times, that will be something I'd be really interested in doing as well.
So would you go up to Tom's practice or Jawan's and just watch and sit in and just learn from those guys?
Well, I'm a very honest guy. I've reached out to all the schools in Michigan, and the only one that responded back was Michigan State. So hopefully I'll hear back from these guys, because I would like to go watch practice. And Coach Izzo's always been really good to me. When I was
Doug's a good friend of mine at Michigan State. So yeah.
So, but they reached. I mean, I know Doug Wojcik. Dave gave me Doug's number, and I reached out.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, reached out to Doug, and he's like, "Yeah, hit me back after Labor Day. We haven't started school yet, so I'll go up there." I do know Jawan, and it was an email that I sent to one of his assistants. Cool. I'll try to go up to Oakland and watch some practices there. Maybe even go and watch the Pistons. Dwayne's always been really nice to me, so I may go up there.
He's
and nothing's. Here's the thing about me is like nothing. It doesn't have to be the NBA. It doesn't have to be Big Ten. I like to watch coaches work and see if I can take some things away, from watching practice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it'll happen for you. Just you keep being the best version of yourself every day, which it seems like you've been on a phenomenal path, your whole life, with great support system, and you can grab from so many different experiences as a player and a coach. And I know you've been through millions of interviews and been on podcasts before, but we genuinely appreciate. We don't know why people come into this space, because we're probably the least known. But like I said, we've had close to 90 pros and from all walks of life, and it's always a fascinating time to share space with our guests, and truly honored that you came and did that with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Your show's different. Your show's more than just basketball or sports. So I enjoyed it. And thank you for having me. We got to get stuff out there. I look forward to following your podcast.
Awesome. Sounds good. And then anything I can do, honestly, like, we know different people, but you just never know, if I think you might be a good fit and I know someone, I'm happy to reach out. And,
appreciate that.
That's something that I love to do, is just connect the dots.
Well, I appreciate that. Maybe I'll take you up on that. It means a lot.
All right. Sounds good. Much love and respect. Right. Glad you got out of there safely, and we'll stay in touch if that's okay.
That'd be great. I appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good. Thank your wife for me. Sorry to take so much of your time.
No, not at all. It's no problem.
All right. Talk to you soon. All right. Thanks, brother. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye. Oh, that was great. Another former collegiate player, NBA player, NBA coach, who's on a path of self-exploration, a family guy. loves dinners with his family when they can all get together, and definitely will be a phenomenal head coach again one day once he gets that opportunity down the road, hopefully sooner rather than later. This episode of the Sports Deli podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, was brought to you by Hootie Hoot Productions. For Dr. J and Coach K, please mask up, Black Lives Matter, stop the Asian hate, and remember it takes a village. Until next time, much love. Peace.